Right now, the fastest and most immediate money transfers we have are e-transfers. But with the new real-time rail system, which will go live in mid-2022, we'll see real-time payments beyond what is already offered through e-transfer. When this innovation is complete, we can imagine scenarios like these. Businesses being able to pay part-time workers immediately upon completion of a shift. Home buyers putting down a deposit on their first home with a click of a button instead of having to physically take a bank draft or certified check to the lawyer's office. And governments being able to distribute emergency funds in a matter of seconds directly into citizens' bank accounts. The first is the concept of a central bank digital currency, a digital Looney, as it were. For several years, the Bank of Canada has been analyzing what circumstances might lead Canada to decide to issue a digital currency. The pandemic may bring us to a decision point sooner than we had anticipated. Next, I'd like to look at the major program of payment system modernization that is now underway in Canada. Consumers and businesses will start to see the benefits of this modernization rolling out this year and next. The pandemic has underscored the importance of expanding the reach of real-time payments. Finally, I will address the issue of cross-border payments, which are often slow, expensive, and vulnerable to fraud. The bank has collaborated with international partners on a roadmap to address the pain points in cross-border payments. We are fully committed to working with the public and private sectors to make any necessary changes in Canada to support this. The digitalization of the economy was well underway before COVID hit, but the changes brought on by the pandemic have been rapid and far-reaching. As a society, we had to quickly implement the virtual workplaces we had largely only been imagining. Nearly 1/3 of Canadians are mostly working from home, including me. I've been in my office only about 8 times since last March. In addition, many students continue to learn virtually. COVID has also changed how we shop. A survey of Canadian retailers shows that e-commerce has nearly doubled from its pre-pandemic levels. Businesses are responding to the pandemic by incorporating new technologies into their operations. In our most recent Business Outlook survey, nearly 2/3 of participating firms reported that they are making some kind of digital investment. Expanding their business online was commonly cited as the reason for these investments on both the operations and the client-facing side. In a speech in Montreal a year ago, I gave our preliminary view that we did not see a need for a central bank digital currency, a digital equivalent of banknotes, at that time, but we could imagine scenarios that could make a central bank digital currency beneficial in Canada. I concluded that we would be moving forward to develop such a digital currency as a contingency plan, given how quickly the world is changing and the time required to develop a viable product. A year later, our view remains unchanged. A digital currency is by no means a foregone conclusion. This said, the world has been changing even faster than we expected. In fact, just 2 weeks after I spoke, the first lockdown was imposed, which accelerated the evolution of the digital economy, as I've just been discussing. So our work to prepare for the day when Canada might want to launch a digital Looney, backed by the Bank of Canada, has also accelerated. In these explorations, we're not alone. In a recent survey, almost 60% of central banks reported the possibility that they will issue a central bank digital currency within the next 6 years. That's up from less than 40% only a year ago. One scenario we've been watching is whether a sharp decline in the acceptance of cash might reach a tipping point in Canada. We've already seen that cash has been losing ground over time, over the last several years, in fact, to digital means of payments as societies and economies modernize. And that's been happening around the world as well as here in Canada. Since COVID hit, we've seen more and more people in Canada hesitating to use or to accept cash. In recent Bank of Canada surveys, Consumers report some merchant preferences for contactless payments, and some report experiencing merchants refusing to accept cash due to fears of virus transmissions. Of course, it's too early to tell whether these trends will continue beyond the pandemic, but we're watching them closely. The other scenario I raised in my speech last year is the increasing use of digital currencies created by the private sector, including cryptocurrencies and so-called stablecoins, en français, crypto-monnaie et crypto-monnaie stable. While these products have existed for several years, some could see a boost from the acceleration of digitalization in the midst of the pandemic. Amid all of these developments, two fundamental questions need to be addressed. First, are there benefits to issuing a digital form of money? And if yes, who should do so? In response to the first question, we don't yet know whether many Canadians will actually want to use a stable coin or any other kind of digital currency when they have other alternatives available, including cash, debit, credit, and e-transfer, all of which are also digital. With the addition of a digital form of cash to the existing suite of digital payments methods, meet a real demand and enhance the evolution of a competitive, vibrant digital economy. More work is clearly needed to identify the potential benefits to users compared with other alternatives. In response to the second question, if the public does want a digital, cash-like currency, some good reasons exist why a central bank should be the one to issue it. Currency is a core part of the Bank of Canada's mandate, and the integrity of our currency is a public good that all Canadians benefit from. Only a central bank can guarantee complete safety and universal access, and with public interest, not profits, as a top priority. Universal access would need to be another key feature of any central bank digital currency. That means, for one thing, ensuring that remote and marginalized communities are not left out of any new way to pay for goods and services. And that includes, but is not limited to, the unbanked and the underbanked. As part of our advancing work, the bank has been researching and experimenting with different technologies. In addition, we've recently engaged 3 university teams to develop independent proposals for what digital currency ecosystem could look like. Their reports will be released tomorrow. This kind of blue sky thinking will help inform our research going forward. We are also carefully considering what the business model for a Canadian central bank digital currency might look like. What role would the private sector play in its development, distribution, and transfer? How would this product interface with Canada's core payment systems that transfer funds among financial institutions to settle both retail and large-scale payments? So let me now turn to talk about those core payment systems. Long before the pandemic hit, efforts to modernize Canada's core payment systems were well underway. This work is important, and with the rapid expansion of the digital economy accelerated by the pandemic, we'll be seeing the benefits even more clearly. Led by Payments Canada, several key players in the payments ecosystem, such as Interac, commercial banks, and other stakeholders, have been working to bring these payment systems fully into the modern digital age. The Bank of Canada is heavily involved as a central bank, a regulator, and in some cases, a participant. Over the next year or so, these improvements will start to come on stream. This is important for Canadians because it will mean greater speed, convenience, competition, and choice in how they're paying for goods and services. Right now, the fastest and most immediate money transfers we have are e-transfers. But with the new real-time rail system, which will go live in mid-2022, we'll see real-time payments beyond what is already offered through e-transfer. When this innovation is complete, we can imagine scenarios like these. Businesses being able to pay part-time workers immediately upon completion of a shift, home buyers putting down a deposit on their first home with a click of a button instead of having to physically take a bank draft or certified check to the lawyer's office, and governments being able to distribute emergency funds in a matter of seconds directly into citizens' bank accounts. Second development I'd like to mention is open banking, which will remove the barriers for banking customers to safely and easily share their financial information if they choose to engage other service providers in managing their money and other assets. Open banking will help promote greater competition and choice by allowing consumers and businesses to more easily compare the products and services that various financial institutions may offer. Several countries have already introduced open banking, and our federal government has launched consultations in how to implement it in Canada. This is being done to ensure that innovations are balanced with data control and privacy considerations. We have come a long way, but there is more work to do. And this work takes on greater urgency as we find ourselves in an environment where the current system's shortcomings could limit the ability of consumers and businesses to pursue the opportunities created by the digital economy. Thankfully, Canadians can look forward to significant improvements in the speed, convenience, efficiency, and choice of digital payments in the near future. This is an important part of the Bank of Canada's responsibility to promote safe, sound, and efficient financial systems. I'd now like to turn to the issue of cross-border payments, an area that has an obvious and pressing need for improvement. Sending money abroad has for a long time been notoriously slow and expensive for individuals and businesses, so much so that it may even interfere with lives and livelihoods. Issues with cross-border payments affect millions of Canadians. This includes new Canadians who send money to families in their country of origin. It includes snowbirds who split their time between Canada and warmer climates, although not this winter for the most part. And it includes many Canadian businesses that face unnecessary costs and delays in paying for supplies and services from abroad or in receiving payment for the things they sell outside the country. As I mentioned at the beginning of my speech today, we have identified numerous pain points in cross-border payments. Technological shortcomings certainly pose problems with different messaging standards in different countries. Anti-terrorism and anti-money laundering regulations, while crucial for our safety and security, can also slow down the transfer of money with multiple compliance checks. And of course, there are numerous time zones to consider. When you send money from Ottawa at noon all the way to Cambodia, the local payment system there isn't open at midnight to process the funds. The G20 roadmap is extensive and lays out work that several different organizations will carry out. For our part, the bank is working with partners internationally, most notably the Committee on Payments and Market Infrastructures at the Bank for International Settlements. But just as important, we're also working to support the coordinated domestic effort that will be necessary to identify and address the most pressing issues from a Canadian perspective. For all these efforts to be successful, central banks and other authorities around the world will need the cooperation of public and private sector partners in their own jurisdictions. Only then can we make lasting improvements to cross-border payments and ensure that people, businesses, and nations around the world have the best opportunity to truly participate in the global economy. The bank will continue to explore the possibilities of a digital currency that would be an electronic version of the banknotes that Canadians already trust and rely on. We would issue such a currency only if and when the time was right, with the support of Canadians and the federal government, and with the best evidence at hand. Meanwhile, we can and will make our core payment systems more effective and efficient to help consumers and businesses exchange funds in real time. And we will push forward with work to make cross-border payments cheaper, easier, and safer for people around the globe to send and receive money.
And which countries are considered more innovative or more proactive and can be followed as an example?
Thanks. Well, that's a very good question. As I mentioned in my speech, of course, in fact, most central banks are exploring the concept of central bank digital currency. At some level, we're certainly one of the front runners in that area. We've been looking at this issue as a research topic for about for over 7 years now, and certainly among central banks, I would say we're among the leading central banks in with regard to the sort of analysis of the issues and exploration of the technology. But there are some other central banks that are actually further ahead in implementing a CBDC. Maybe one I would mention is in the Bahamas, where the issue is really about getting banknotes to a number of different islands, and there's a benefit to having a digital form of banknotes to replace cash, and so it's a tool of financial inclusion, and that's a project that's already been launched. Another example is in China, where of course, the authorities have now moved to the point of actually doing a pilot project that involves tens of millions of people, and so those are examples where we've actually seen central bank digital currencies either being launched or being moved towards being launched. But our situation's a bit different here because we have, to start with, already have a very well-functioning financial system and a payment system that the Canadians can use and rely on. And so the bar is quite high in terms of the improvements we could make with a digital currency, and also because we have very high standards in terms of the acceptable level of privacy and resilience and convenience that we would attach to a digital currency if we were to launch one. And so we're actually more in line with another group of central banks, which are more advanced country central banks, and we've been actually partnering with a group of them, with 6 other central banks, to explore these ideas. And those central banks are largely looking at it in a similar way to the way I've been describing in my speech and in other communications.